Hello, everybody, and welcome to our panel discussion. So my name is Jacqueline, and I'm the International Education Intern at the Center for International Programs, and I will be your host for today's panel. So studying abroad is a big decision, and there are oftentimes a lot of questions associated with it. The first step in the study abroad process is to complete the information session. So if you haven't already done so, you can email cip@uofg.ca to get access to our course link information session. We have offered two virtual info sessions during the study abroad fair. So if you attended one of those, you're all set to go. But beyond the info session, students have questions about what it's actually like to travel, study, to make friends, live abroad, and so much more. And we know a lot of times that these questions are best answered by other students who have studied abroad themselves. So that's why we put together this panel of experts. We have 6 students with us today who studied abroad in different countries and different regions around the world. So we have questions that we put together to get the conversation started and to learn more about the experiences of our students. But we also left time for our attendees to submit questions of their own. So if you have a question that you would like to direct to the whole group or maybe a specific person, please feel free to submit your question in the Q&A chat box. So let's get started with some introductions. We're going to go through the panel and ask you to introduce yourself, give your name, your major, the country you went to, and your host university. So Elena, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself first.
So hi, I'm Elena. I'm a fourth year neuroscience major, and I went to Australia and attended Australian National University in Canberra.
Thanks, Elena. And Bryn?
Hi, I'm Bryn. I'm a fourth year studying philosophy and biology, and I was in Scotland at the University of Aberdeen.
Thanks, Bryn. And Tyler, I'll pass it over to you.
Hi, my name is Tyler. I went to the Netherlands to Wageningen University. I am in fourth year in the major crop science.
And Joshua, how about you?
I'm a fourth year in international development, and I went to China at the East Normal China University.
Thanks. And Cyan?
Hi, so I'm Cyan. I'm in my fourth year of. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, just as I'm muted, which is weird. I'm in my fourth year of environmental science, and I went to Norway and I studied at the Norwegian University of Life Sciences just outside of Oslo.
Great, thanks. And Sam?
My name is Sam, and I'm in fourth year applied human nutrition. And last year I went to Ghana, which is in West Africa, and I studied at the University of Ghana.
That's great. Thank you guys so much for being here today. And so now we'll get started with some of the questions that we have prepared. So the first question is, beyond your normal tuition costs, how much would you say it costs with a flight, accommodation, food, trips, those sorts of things? And we can start with Sam.
Okay, so I don't have a huge grand total for the amount of money I spent while I was away, but I lived in residence while I was there, and it was about the same price that my rent would be in Guelph with rent and utilities here to live in residence. And then food there was way cheaper, and it was cheaper to there was a little night market on campus, and you could just go to the market and there was prepared food. So a meal would be $1.50 or $1 to get. So food was obviously way cheaper there. Even if we went out for a nice dinner, it would be still less than eating here. I'd say my flight was probably around 2,000-ish round trip, and then trips on the weekend, it was usually we would travel in groups, and transportation there was very cheap. It took a long time, but a lot less than a bus ticket here or anything, but you could travel hundreds of kilometers. And we would stay in a lot of Airbnbs for travel, and it would be like the most expensive place we ever stayed was like $20 Canadian a night, so a lot cheaper in Ghana than it was here, I'd say.
Yeah, so it seems like your main cost was your flight there, and then after that, everything was like, rent might have been the same, but after that, it was roughly cheaper.
In general, yeah.
Yeah. So I wonder, Joshua, you went to China, and what was your experience like with the costs over there?
So I also found it to be a lot cheaper, especially for food and transportation. I stayed off campus, and my rent was about the same as in Guelph as well. My flight, I think it was around like 1,500, I think, in total. Yeah. And then overall I spent around the same that I would in Guelph, but I definitely did a lot more as I took multiple trips around China when I was there.
So you were able to do more with the same amount of money that you would at Guelph.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
That's great to know, because I know a lot of students worry about the finances, so there are options that are available where you can do more with your money, and maybe you'll find some cheaper food and cost of living while you're abroad. So we'll move on to our second question. When I'm first going to pass it over to Elena, what type of accommodation did you live in, and how far was it from the campus?
So I lived on campus, and I'm not sure if it's like this for all universities in Australia, but the dorms that they have there are either run by the university itself, or it's run by a company called Unilodge. And so I stayed in a dorm run by Unilodge, and basically all of the dorms within this company are pretty much the exact same as like East residents here at Guelph. So you get your own room, but you share a kitchen and bathrooms with some other people. And these dorms you can either live in one like completely by yourself, or you can share a flat with up to, I think, 5 other people. So for me, again, I lived on campus and I shared a flat with 2 other girls, and we had 2 bathrooms, so that was great. And then, yeah, I would say the furthest like class from my dorm was maybe a 15-minute walk. So it wasn't too bad, but probably a little bit like longer than at Guelph. But yeah, that's kind of like my experience there.
That's great. Thanks for sharing. And Bryn, what was your accommodation like in Scotland?
Sorry, can you guys hear me? My mic's being a bit slow. Okay, awesome. Yeah, so I also lived on like student accommodation provided by the university, but it was a little bit different than like Guelph, where accommodations maybe like 5-10 minutes from campus. Mine was about like maybe 20-30 minute walk to campus every day, and there was a bus system. It was just very expensive. Like it would have been like $5 Canadian for like a one-way ticket. And yeah, so I ended up walking most days, but it was kind of like this cluster of student accommodation houses, and I had probably one of the cheaper rooms, and it was still probably like maybe $600-700 a month. And it was like a little single with, I had a sink in my dorm. I shared a kitchen with all the other girls on my floor. Yeah, it was pretty nice. It was just a little bit expensive, just because Scotland's a little bit more expensive than Canada normally.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing. I know if you are worried about finances, there are different options, whether you decide to share a dorm or have a private dorm. Those could be different ways to save money or have different opportunities. So we're going to shift it now over to academics and courses. And I'm going to ask Tyler, how many courses did you take while you were abroad? And did they count as core courses, restricted electives, or electives?
So when I was in the Netherlands, during a Guelph semester, you have the opportunity to take 4 classes. And the semester altogether is broken up very differently. Rather than having one semester throughout the whole 4 months and having all your classes run throughout the whole thing, in the Netherlands at the Wageningen University, you have periods instead of semesters. And so a period will only be about a month long, and you take 1 to 2 classes per period. And so it was a whole day of very intensive one class, and then you'd switch to the next class and so on. So I ended up taking 2 classes over there. and I enjoyed them. Anyone going, I would warn them to be prepared to work hard. There's definitely a mentality over there to really do as well as you can in school. They ended up just counting for electives for me, but that being said, if you talk to your program coordinator, you can get the classes to count for your majors. I also chose classes based on how many days and what the schedules were. So like, for example, one class I took only had school on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, which like went well with traveling for me. So anyone picking classes, I would look at the schedule as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Cyan, what did you find the academic system was like in Norway?
Yeah, so I found my experience was a little bit more similar to Tyler's than it would be to here. They break their system up into semesters, but it's a bit different. So January is like a 1-class intensive semester that's only run for a month. I actually didn't take a January block class, but then they break it up into like a spring semester and then a fall semester. So the spring semester was from February to May, so I was actually still in classes a little bit longer than I would have been if I was at Guelph. But I took 3 classes that ended up returning to Guelph as like 5 courses here. So I got like my full course load of credits. But I took, they came back as restricted electives, which was really nice for me because then I didn't have to like work on finding restricted electives or like taking an extra course in the summer or something. And then because of the way that the schooling was there, the 2 of the courses that I took actually were they called them like master's level courses. But they were like equivalent to 4th-year courses here, just because like the bachelor's programs there are only 3 years long. So we had to like kind of work on that. So it's a little difficult to like bring them back to Guelph and like get them equivalent courses. But other than that, I really liked my courses. I found that they were like pretty comparable in terms of difficulty to Guelph classes. And it was really cool because our classes were super small. So they were like maybe 15 people each, which was nice because you got a chance to really interact with like some profs that you wouldn't have had a chance to and like meet new people from all over the place. And same as with Tyler, like I picked my classes based on a bit of scheduling. So I got really lucky and got like Fridays off, and then I had a class like late on Monday. So I had a 4-day weekend, which was also really nice for traveling. So I would recommend doing that because I had some friends that got stuck having like a Friday night class, and some of them were mandatory. So you had to go to them to get attendance marks. So that's just something to consider as well. But other than that, I really enjoyed everything.
Yeah, I think you brought up a lot of great points about how the academic semesters can be different than what we have at Guelph, the number of courses that are considered a full-time credit load. Like you only had to take 3 courses, I think you said. Depending on where you go, some students have to take like 8 to 10 courses, and that equals a full credit load. So it can be very different from where you decide to go. And we have a question from a student. I see Bryn answered it in the comments, and they just asked, did you have to take summer courses to make up for any mandatory courses you were unable to take during your time in exchange? I think most of the time people are able to work with their program counselors to see how it'll fit into their degree. That way you aren't going to delay your graduation. You're going to get the credits that you need. But I don't know if anybody else has something that they would like to share regarding that. Were you able to get all the credits you needed while you were on exchange?
Yeah, I know for me, I just used up some free electives that I had, and then I had like some science electives that I needed to get done, so I got 2 of those done over there. Yeah.
I had to take a course in the summer just to like make sure that just in case like some things didn't transfer back properly. I was just trying to be like more proactive, I guess. But I had to take like microbiology in the summer just this past year, I guess, just to like make sure like that everything was gonna like fit properly, because I wasn't taking my like compared to all the other people in my program, I'm not like on the same schedule as them, but I'm still gonna graduate on time, but things just had to be shuffled around. But like my program advisor was like super helpful, and just like they want you to go away, so they're helpful in rearranging everything for you so that you'll graduate on time.
That's great to hear. Thanks, everybody. So the next question, I'm going to send it over to Joshua first. How difficult or easy was it to integrate into the culture? And was there a bit of cultural adjustment that you had to do?
Yeah, there was a bit of a cultural adjustment for sure. I mean, I approached it with an open mind. I was ready, I was coming into a different culture, so I knew things were definitely going to be different. Overall, I mean, I went to Shanghai. It's probably the most westernized city, for lack of a better term, in China. And so, for every, there was like all your local stores and stuff. Like you could see there was McDonald's, there was Starbucks if you're feeling like homesick for like some Western food. And also, like you're with all these other students who are from all over the world as well. And so there was like that interaction with just other people from Canada, the States and stuff as well. Just to talk about like experiencing that new culture because you have someone else to experience it with. And so if you are feeling like a bit of a culture shock on it, it's just nice to talk to someone else about it there.
Yeah, great thing about exchange is that you're not going through this whole process alone. Even though you might go there not knowing anybody, there's lots of other exchange students that you meet while you're there. Bryn, what about yourself? How is it adjusting to life in Scotland?
Yeah, so it was actually pretty easy. I feel like Scotland is not one of the most different places compared to Canada. There was a few cultural adjustments, mainly with just like what certain things are called or like small things. Like when I first got there, I didn't realize that they don't have just like normal coffee. If you're getting coffee, it has to be like an espresso or something or like a latte. And they don't have normal coffee. It's like small things like that that you just have to get used to. Definitely was not the biggest culture shock ever. But it did help that when I first got to the UK, I stayed with some family. And so that was like my first introduction to the UK, and they know the UK pretty well. So it helped to kind of find, I guess, like insiders to the culture and like have them introduce you to the culture. But yeah, was not the biggest culture shock ever.
Yeah, it's very true. There's lots of different options, whether you go to Scotland where it's less of an adjustment, or if you go over to China, you may be expecting more of an adjustment when you go there. What about Cyan in Norway? What did you find?
I feel like I had a very like middle ground between China and Scotland. I would say that like the main thing was the language barrier, just because it's like so different from English. A lot of people did speak English, which was really nice, and that was really helpful. But yeah, I would say that was the biggest like kind of barrier, I guess. But I found that my school and like the organizations within my school did a really good job of trying to integrate international students in with like the Norwegian students, for lack of a better term. And then they did a really good job of like introducing the international students to each other and like running events and hosting things that made sure everyone felt like they were welcome and they were wanted to be there. And then another good thing that I found that my school did, which was really cool, was our residences were also kind of like an East style apartment. But it was so 6 people in an apartment block, but they would have 3 Norwegian students who were studying there for their entire undergrad. And then they would add in 3 international students from across the world, which was really interesting. So you had a chance to meet people that were already a part of the school. So kind of had like a little bit of like background and understanding of the school, which was nice. So you could kind of talk to them to understand the little things like where the grocery store was and how to get on the best train to Oslo and everything like that. But then you also had people that were always down to kind of do stuff and hang out and weren't as focused on school, I guess, and more focused on like traveling and having fun. So I honestly had a really easy time integrating into the culture. And I think that's just because of like the setup of my school and how welcoming they were and how many programs they had for international students.
Yeah, so it sounds like you had a lot of opportunities to interact with other students and meet new people while you were there. Did other people have similar experiences? Like, did your university or your accommodation set up opportunities to meet new people?
Yeah, sorry. My university did set up a bunch of like in the beginning of first year, not first year, sorry, in the beginning of the first month, set up a bunch of like interactions with other international students and other other people in my residence building. And I think that was one of the biggest surprises for me, was that the majority of people I interacted with actually were just other international students, not necessarily like people from where I was staying. And I thought that was like probably one of the main reasons I got to meet the people that I did, was because of those events.
That's great. Thanks for sharing. So I know a lot of students, when they do study abroad, they do want to do travel and maybe explore the country they're in or some of the surrounding countries. And so I'm going to ask Elena, did you travel to other locations while you were on exchange in Australia? And was it during the semester or after the semester ended?
So I was lucky enough that like COVID wasn't really a big thing in Australia while I was there. And so I ended up staying the whole semester and even a month after the semester ended. So I came back in the beginning of July. And so everything like went online, as like most universities did, around, I guess maybe like March. So then while the semester was still going on, me and a group of friends did like a whole road trip up the east coast of Australia. So Canberra is like towards like the south of Australia, and then we went all the way north up to like the Gold Coast and Cairns and stuff like that. And then towards the end of my time there, we ended up flying down back to Melbourne. So yeah, I would say that we were able to travel a lot, and honestly, like going online like really helped that, because I had a lot of like in-person labs and stuff, and so that were mandatory. So like if things weren't online, I probably wouldn't have traveled that much. So yeah, I was really lucky in that sense. I got to see a lot of the country.
I think you're probably one of the few students who COVID actually helped you travel and see more of Australia.
Yeah, no, it's really bad to say, but like I had a great time.
That's okay. I'm glad somebody got some benefits from it. Tyler, what about yourself? Were you able to do any traveling?
Yeah, in Europe, countries are very close, so I discovered pretty quickly that's very easy to hop around. So I went to 14 different countries in Europe. The Netherlands, at Wageningen University, they give you 2 weeks off. So on that trip, a group of us from Guelph all went to Spain, Portugal, France, Monaco, Italy, and Vatican City. On another trip, I went to Germany, Belgium, and then the Netherlands, of course. And I went skiing in Austria, and then Slovakia, Hungary, England, and Denmark. So from my travels, I learned that you can learn so much. And when you're on exchange, you just take every opportunity you can to go and see something new, try something different, and just learn as much as you can, because it's a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Wow, 14 countries. That's pretty good. You checked off a lot of places. What about Sam? When you were in Ghana, did you do much traveling to other places?
So I didn't get around as much as Tyler, I guess. We did a lot of travel within Ghana. It's like a pretty big country. There's lots of different things to see. So on the weekends, I'd say probably like 3 of the 4 weekends in a month, we would go away, always take like a long weekend, I'd say, like a Friday to Monday sort of thing, or like leave like late Thursday night on like a night bus or something. But it was always good just to like see something new, just like do outdoorsy things. You go surfing, like, or we'd go, like, you can do historical things like museums and like learn stuff still. And then we had like a break between the end of classes and then when exams started for like 10 days. So we went to Togo and Benin, which are like 2 countries right beside Ghana. And then we just like adventured around there, kind of came back. It's kind of like slow, like moving there. Like it's not like you can just like hop on a plane. I'd say like lots of traffic, not great roads, so you're not getting around super quick. And then after exams, we did fly up to like the north of Ghana to be able to do like a safari and stuff, and then we like worked our way down because we had more time. But you couldn't just like, it wouldn't make sense to just fly somewhere like just for the weekend and come back. But we still got to see lots of things.
Yeah, I think that's true. It depends on where you go if you're going to be traveling to other countries for things, or if you're going to be traveling within that country, the modes of transportation. But oftentimes I think our students are able to get around and see different things, whatever is nearby. So Sam, I'm going to ask you our next question. What was the favorite course that you took while you were on exchange?
Me, right? Yeah. Okay. I took a Ghanaian history course, which was actually super interesting. It was a lot of, like, the other 5 courses I took were mostly like local students who were in it, but this one did have a lot of international kids. But it did kind of help, like, Ghana had a very different culture than us, like, us understand, like, why things were the way they were, between, like, just, like, how families worked, the difference between, like, the responsibilities of men and women in society and things like that. It just, like, opened your eyes and, like, helped you understand why the cultural differences, like, are the way they are, which was helped, like, get yourself into the culture more, I'd say. When we did travel on the weekends, you were like, oh, this all, like, does make sense.
Oh, that's great. So you were able to learn more about the local culture. And I'm going to pass this question over to Elena and the rest of the group. So Elena, what was your favorite course?
So weirdly enough, I took like an intro French course just because, like, you know, I was on exchange. I wanted to take something fairly manageable, but it ended up being like my favorite class. I had like a friend that I made who was also on exchange, and she actually goes to Western. And so we ended up being in the same class. And so that made kind of like adjusting a little bit easier. And then also because it was an intro class, like all of the students there were first years. And as soon as they heard that we were exchange students, it was like, oh my God, what's Canada like? Like all this stuff. You know, we would have like people come up to us asking about where we're from, like how are we adjusting and stuff. So that helped with like meeting people, like local Australians. And even like the teacher, she's probably one of the best profs I've ever had in my entire life. Yeah, she just made it so manageable. And then when like everything started, like when COVID started happening, like she handled everything super well. And when I was traveling, you know, I told her, I was like, I don't know if I can come to class. She's like, it's okay. I trust you. You're a good student. As long as you do the work, you're fine. So I was like, love you. But yeah, that was probably my favorite class.
Oh, that sounds really great. Bryn, what about you in Scotland?
Yeah, so my favorite course was probably a Celtic folklore course that I took. It was, so Aberdeen is actually a really, like, most of their students are international students. So I was kind of disappointed when I first went there and I realized that it wasn't as Scottish as I hoped it would be. So I tried to make up for that by at least taking some sort of like Scottish history course or something. And so I took Celtic folklore, and we learned a lot about like certain fairy tales, certain like practices that are still going on today. Also like the history of the interaction between like England and Scotland. And it was really fascinating.
Yeah, learning more about like where you're actually living can be a great opportunity. How about you, Tyler?
I found the most interesting class was actually a tourism class. And although I'm in agriculture science and I've never taken a class like this before, it was pretty interesting because they just talked about the world and different stuff, you know, stuff that I wasn't aware of. And it was a lot about geography. And I just found it really interesting.
Yeah, sometimes just learning from a different perspective can be neat too. And how about you, Joshua?
My favorite course was probably the politics course. Politics in China is very different from here. We hear about it so much on the news and stuff. So having that, like actually being there, and it was a seminar-based course, and so it was interaction with the Chinese students as well as other international students, and like having those conversations with them and understanding how the system actually works and where they place the value on stuff was like really interesting and insightful, I think.
I'm really sorry about all the machines that are going in the background of my video or audio, but Cyan, what about you? What was your favorite course?
So weirdly enough, my favorite course was actually a tropical ecology course, but Norway is not a tropical country at all, so it was kind of ironic that I was taking that while I was there. But it was just really interesting. The prof was super engaging, and he'd been to a lot of places and like worked and studied in a bunch of different tropical countries. And it was kind of cool because it ended up coming back as a restricted elective for me, and it was like a course that I would never be able to take at Guelph. So it was just really cool to be able to learn stuff like that and have it actually contribute to my degree. Yeah, it was just really interesting. So
I think hearing from all of our students, the diverse number of classes that they took, it shows you the importance of saving some electives while you're abroad, because you can take so many different types of courses while you're there. So Cyan, since we have you here, we'll stick with you. What was your favorite thing, like whether it was an activity, a trip, getting to know the new culture, what was your favorite thing from studying abroad?
Such a broad question. I don't even really know where to start. I guess I would say that my favorite part was definitely just meeting new people. Like I said earlier, I was really lucky in how my school was really supportive in integrating the international students and the Norwegians and making sure everybody had an opportunity to meet other people. So I would just say that was my favorite part. I met tons of people from like all different countries that I ended up being really good friends with. I still talk to them like on a pretty consistent basis, which is really exciting. Just like knowing that I have those connections potentially for life. And yeah, just meeting new people who had completely different like experiences and perspectives and lifestyles as me was really interesting. I also went on this pretty cool trip to like the very, very north of like Norway and Finland, like above the Arctic Circle, which was really interesting because that was something I never would have done on my own, but the school actually organized it. And it was an opportunity for people, mostly international students, to travel like during the school week on like a funded organized trip, which was something that I never really thought I would ever do, but they had a ton of really cool activities and stuff like that. So it was kind of something that I was against before going away. I was kind of like, I'm going to do things on my own. Like I can do everything by myself, but having an outside organization do that for me was really interesting because we got to do a lot of things that like otherwise we never would have been able to do without like the numbers behind it. So yeah, stuff like that was really cool, and I would recommend looking out for organizations like that and keeping an open mind, unlike what I had at first.
I think that's great advice. Keeping an open mind for study abroad is a huge, important thing that will make a difference in your experience. So Sam, what about you? What was your favorite thing that happened while you were studying abroad?
I went on, there was like lots of trips that were obviously very memorable, but I think like one of my favorite things was just like the different way of life. Like the pace of life there was just completely not like Southern Ontario. Like it wasn't like, oh, we're in like a big rush, like everything's going to happen at a specific time. And at the start it was like a huge adjustment because like a lot of people were from like North America where like if something starts at 1, like everyone's early and like ready to go, whereas there, if you were going to like get a bus, instead of like waiting, like the bus leaves at 1, it's like when like a whole coach bus fills up, the bus will leave. So it's like you're not in a rush to like get your food prepared for you. So it just like is a totally different pace of life that really like slows you down. It's like, oh, like I didn't need to pack my day full of like 15 hours of things. I could just like do a few things, relax. Like it gave you more time to get to know all the people that you were traveling with and things like that. It didn't like, things always didn't go perfectly, but that was like the good part about it in their culture. It didn't have to go perfectly on schedule. You could just like take your time, and wherever you ended up, it always ended up to be good.
That's cool. That sounds really neat. And how about Elena? How was Australia for you? What was your favorite?
So like everyone, I'm sure we have like I have a lot of amazing memories. I think my favorite was when we went snorkeling in the Great Barrier Reef. So we went to this place called Airlie Beach, which is a few hours away from Cairns, which is at the like very top of Australia in the north. And so a group of 8 of us, for the day, we found this company and they took us on a boat to these like islands that are off of like the mainland. And there's this place called Whitehaven Beach, which I don't know if anyone's heard of it, but it's supposed to be like one of the most beautiful beaches in the world, and I can confirm it was. So we went there, and then after staying at the beach for like an hour or two, we went snorkeling, and we got to see like all the coral and all the fish, and it was super, super cool. And like the guides that we had were super welcoming, and they wanted to know like about where we were all from, because we were all from different places and stuff. So yeah, it was just like a great day. And we also had like an underwater camera, so we were like taking pictures in our gear and like us underwater. So yeah, it was really nice.
Snorkeling and beaches definitely sounds like an Australian thing to do. Bryn, what was your favorite thing from Scotland?
So yeah, very hard to pick a favorite. I think probably one of my favorite trips was sometime around the beginning of December. Me and my friends went to Glasgow and Edinburgh, and we're just like exploring the Christmas markets there. And I had been to Edinburgh and Glasgow before in the semester that I was away, but this was my first time going with these specific friends, and it was a great time. We found a lot of little pubs, we found a lot of really cool things, and yeah, I think that was probably one of my favorite trips, and Glasgow is definitely one of my favorite places.
Yeah, sometimes it can just be the people who you go with. It's different than the last time, or it can make a huge difference in your experience. So, Tyler, what about you? What was your favorite?
The most memorable part of my exchange would be a trip I took into France, and I went to the D-Day beaches and traveled around, and then to the World War I Vimy Ridge, and it was just I can't even describe like the feeling of going to all those locations, standing on the beach, just learning about everything that happened there, and how many people gave up their lives for our freedom. It was just amazing. Like the city that the paratroopers were dropping into, there was a steel fence all the way around the main square. There was not a single rung that didn't have bullet gouges out of it. So it's just like truly remarkable. And they reenacted a statue where two paratroopers got hung up on the church steeple and managed to live. So it was just in the German bunkers and everything. So I've never been a prouder Canadian than the day I went there, and I guess that's my most memorable moment.
Yeah, there's lots of history abroad, but I think Canada is a relatively new country compared to some of these other ones. So learning about the history while you're there is a great opportunity. So now I'm going to pass it over to Joshua. What was your favorite thing when you were in China?
So I took a trip into the Zhangjiajie Mountains, which they're like the mountains from the movie Avatar, in that they just kind of shoot up and they float in the clouds almost. And so when you go up, you look out and it's like a tropical, but it's also you're in the clouds, and it was a really amazing experience just walking around every corner. Like it kind of took my breath away, just like how beautiful the mountains were. It was really nice, especially because Shanghai is such a big city. Like having that week away to go in nature and stuff was also really enjoyable. And the food in China is amazing. I love trying new food, and so getting the opportunity to try all different types of fruit as well as different types of meat and stuff was definitely one of my favorite experiences of going there.
I know everybody asks people who have been on exchange what their favorite part was or what their favorite place was, and it's such a hard question to answer, so you guys did a great job. And the next question is, what piece of advice would you give another student who's planning to do an exchange or some sort of study abroad experience? So Joshua, what would your piece of advice be?
Go for it for sure. It was an amazing experience. And I didn't get to end in any of my top 5 choices to begin with. And I was a little apprehensive going to China. Like it wasn't my top choice. I didn't know if I really definitely wanted to go, but I still had an amazing time there. I don't regret it in the least. And the people at the CIP office were super helpful and accommodating and making sure everything went smoothly with that as well. So I'd say definitely just go for it for sure.
I didn't know that it wasn't one of your top 5 choices. Were your other choices in China or were they somewhere else?
No, none of them were in China actually. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it was completely unexpected, but I'm glad to hear that it turned out well and enjoyed it. So what about Cyan? What tip would you give to anybody considering study abroad?
I would just say like get started with the planning process early. I actually like I knew like forever that I wanted to go on exchange, and like in grade 12 I was like I'm going to go on exchange in my 3rd year of university. But like I didn't realize that you had to like start prepping like almost a year in advance, and I actually went to like the very last possible like study abroad session that you could go to, and then had to like submit my application the night it was due just because I really had no idea what I was doing. So I like didn't do any research on any of the schools. I just kind of looked. I was like, Sweden, Norway, those look pretty, and I just like submitted an application. So I got really lucky that I loved where I went, but I would say like definitely like do some research before you go away, because I also thought that the school that I was going to, like NMBU, was in Oslo, the capital of Norway. And I got a little bit tricked because the school had 2 campuses, and one was in the capital and one was in a little tiny like 3-street village 30 minutes outside of Oslo. So I was like super hyped that I was going to be spending time in the capital, and I ended up in like this little tiny agricultural city that ended up being amazing, but definitely like not what I expected. A really tough adjustment at first. But yeah, so I would just recommend like actually looking into where you want to go and what you want to do before the day the applications are due.
I think that's a really good point. Yeah, so for anybody who's interested in studying abroad, you do kind of have to start thinking about it almost a year in advance. So every fall semester is when we start this information session process, and then January, the end of January, is when your applications are due. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about applying, and don't leave it to the last minute, because there are lots of things that would be helpful to research and to know in advance of submitting your application. So Sam, what about you? Do you have any advice for people considering study abroad?
I would just say, and it's kind of like redundant that everyone says when they go away, but just like take every opportunity you get and always just like roll with it. Like you might have this like perfect picture in your head of like how you want everything to go, but like 9 times out of 10 that is not going to happen. So you just have to be like one night we were like literally had like taken a bunch of buses to get to a town, and we had to like take a motorcycle taxi to get to our hotel, and they're like, it's too late and like the road is unsafe, so we're not going to take you. So we're like, well, are we stuck here? What's our plan? And then we just literally just like called a hotel in a different city and just like went and stayed there instead. Like just always like roll with it and keep an open mind, and it will always work out. Even if it's not like your perfectly planned picture, it still will be an amazing time.
Yeah, I think we came back to that topic of open-mindedness again. I think a lot of times being flexible, adaptable while you're studying abroad is important, because you never know what's going to happen, but oftentimes it ends up being pretty positive and a good experience. So Elena, what about you? What would your piece of advice be?
So I'd probably say like prepare to push yourself out of your comfort zone. Because you know, every time you hear a story about exchange, it's like it was the best experience of my life, like nothing went wrong. And well, the first part is true, but for my experience personally, and looking back on it now, I feel like I was being a little bit dramatic. But in the first week that I was there, like I hadn't made like those close bonds yet with other people, but it seemed like everyone around me already had. And so, you know, you're in a whole other country, like completely by yourself, and it's like, what if I'm stuck here for all of these months alone with no friends? And so like I was going through like that kind of spiral, because I had like a bunch of acquaintances but no like actual close friends, even though it was only a week. But then, you know, I was like, you know, I'm gonna stop feeling sorry for myself, and so I just like found the courage to like text someone that I had met, which is the girl from like my French class, and I was like, hey, you know, like the other night was really fun, like do you want to hang out with the lake, and maybe we can ask like other exchange students, because there we had like a huge exchange student group chat on WhatsApp. And so she was like, oh my god, yeah, that sounds like so much fun. And then like I was so relieved, and then that was actually the day where I met like my closest friends, and we still talk every single day. Like I was just talking to them before this telling them that I was going to be like speaking on our experiences and stuff. And so yeah, I would say like just be courageous. Like if you feel like you're not having the experience you want, then you need to push yourself in order to achieve what you want, if that makes sense.
I think that's some really great advice. Like, whether it's making friends or what it is, there's always going to be ups and downs of the experience, but the downs will end up going up, and like there will be a bright side to it. And so pushing yourself outside your comfort zone, I think, is great advice. Thank you for that. And Bryn, what would your tip be?
So I think it would just be like to really know what you're wanting to get out of your exchange experience, and to like know what your options are. I had a friend who, she wasn't from Canada, she was from Belgium, but she was there on exchange, and she ended up taking all classes that were like mandatory for her schoolwork back home. And so that was her main focus. And she spent basically the whole abroad trip going back and forth from the library to her dorm room, and that's it. She didn't travel. She barely would go out on weekends or anything. And I do know that it was something she kind of regretted, because she went to have a great experience in Aberdeen and to like get to know the place, get to know Scotland. And the fact that she kind of ended up in a position where she kind of had to just focus on her schoolwork, and that was it, was a little bit disappointing. And so I was very much aware of the fact that I wanted to travel, so I planned my courses accordingly to make sure that I was taking courses that I could travel and do at the same time. And yeah, it's just about knowing what you're trying to get out of the experience and working towards that value as much as you can, so that you're not going to end up coming home disappointed.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and setting your expectations early, because it's study abroad, so there is that academic component, and there's the benefits academically, like new courses, new perspectives, all that stuff. But we also understand that like it is a huge travel opportunity, and you develop yourself and your perspective of the world, and that's from traveling. And so it is a balance, I think, between all of the opportunities that you're presented while you're studying abroad. So now I'm going to pass it over to Tyler. What would your piece of advice be for any prospective students?
Well, when I first started this process, I never even thought about going on exchange. It wasn't something I would typically do. And I ended up just going along with friends to the meeting, and then decided maybe I should do this. And so I signed up, and then the day before our flight, I realized, what am I doing? I'm actually gonna have to go. And but it turned out to be like amazing. Like, even if you're kind of nervous about going, everything works out, and this is just an opportunity that you can't pass up. It's my favorite time in all university. Some of the best memories in my life so far is on exchange. And there's a few strategies that I did to kind of make myself a little less nervous about it that I would suggest if anyone's nervous that they do. The first one is you'll get emailed a list of all the other kids from Guelph going to that country, and you should email them or like create a group chat and get together a few times before you go. And then at least you have like some friendly faces over there, and you know that you have each other's back. The other thing that I did, which I thought was really good, was Guelph has an exchange buddy program in Guelph where you get paired up with a person on exchange in Guelph who's from that country. So I emailed them saying I'd be interested in doing this if you can pair me with someone from the Netherlands. And so sure enough, they did. And so the semester before I went on exchange, I was paired up with Laura, a girl from the Netherlands, who I got to know pretty well. So then I had somebody local there who I knew, who went to the same university, who I could hang out with, and who I could ask any like cultural questions to. So a combination of those two kind of made me feel a little better about going. And I recommend, if other people want to have know a few people before they go, that's a good way to do it.
Yeah, I think that was a good point. And Wageningen, I don't know how to pronounce it properly, but the university in the Netherlands, they are one of our partners where regularly we offer a number of students can go to that university. So in early December, we're going to release a list that'll tell you how many spots are available at each university. If you're nervous about traveling by yourself, maybe you want to pick a spot that there are a number of students who will be going there. That way you'll have the support of other students from Guelph or some of our summer programs are more like group travel. So there's lots of different options if you're nervous about traveling by yourself, or support's available for before you do go study abroad. And yeah, so that is it for the questions that we have for our panel. Thank you everybody for participating. I think you had a lot of great information to share and points to bring up. If any of our students who are attending have any questions that they would like to ask to our panel, please feel free to send your messages in the chat. And if not, I'm going to start wrapping up this event now. So I know that a lot of students right now are worried about COVID and how it might be affecting study abroad. So we do have an FAQ page on our website that you can check out, where we're posting updates about if programs are canceled, some cancellation fees, the current application process that we're going through. And so right now our advice is that we are continuing to go through with the application, hoping that it will we'll be able to send students abroad in the near future, but we will continue to monitor all travel advisories from the Government of Canada, UofG, our partner institutions, all of that information to keep our student safety as our priority. So please complete the info session if you haven't already. Do your research about the opportunities that are available, the cost of living. Speak to your program counselor to see how you can make it fit into your degree. If you have questions for CIP, we are happy to answer them. You can send us an email, or you can book a virtual appointment with us. We're happy to meet with you and answer any questions you may have. We have some more sessions coming up in the Study Abroad Fair, so check out our website to follow along and attend those. And thank you for everybody who attended. We'll be closing down this session shortly.